Well, hi there. Welcome back to Safety Heavyweights. I'm your host, Doug Neubauer, and it's a beautiful day out here in the Carolinas. Sometime in February, we're having temperatures over 70 degrees. Not unheard of, but it is a little odd. So I'm taking advantage of the nice weather to speak to you. Now, if you're new to Safety Heavyweights, it's basically a channel created for safety professionals to talk about the safety profession. So to provide encouragement and a resource to people that are interested in getting into the safety profession. Watch the introduction video to see why I felt like I had to do this. But you know what? I can't ask other safety professionals to come on this show and share their stories without first sharing my story. So sit back, relax, grab a snack and a beverage, or just a beverage, or just listen and hear how I got into the safety profession. It's quite, shall we say, an eclectic patchwork career path. We'll start in the 1990s. From 1990 to around February 2001, I was involved in aviation in some way, shape, or form. Now, anybody that's worked in aviation or works in aviation pretty much know that safety is coming out of your mouth every other sentence. The safety of the crew, the safety of the aircraft, the safety of the passengers. So whether you're fixing them, whether you're flying them, whether you're guiding them, or whether you're loading them, there is a safety component for aviation at all times. I did spend time training to learn to fly aircraft. I spent time training to learn to fix aircraft. I spent time teaching people to fly aircraft. I spent time fixing aircraft, and I have spent time loading aircraft. Not necessarily all in that order, but that was for a good decade plus of my life. And I kind of got interested in safety then from the aviation side. When you're in college to study aviation and flight science, you do study aircraft disasters. And you try to figure out what went wrong or what the results of the NTSB investigation were. Well, that interested me, and oddly enough, every safety class I could take, I took. And so my last job in aviation was working on aircraft, fixing them. I didn't fly them, I was fixing them and updating, modifying them, shall we say. And 2001, well, things kind of changed a little bit. See, while I was at another company in Alabama working on aircraft, I got involved in an emergency response team. I became a medical first responder and eventually became an EMT basic. And I really liked that side of, I guess, life. It was interesting being involved in incident investigations as well as the response and mitigation, helping, treat people. And I was like, this is really interesting to me, and I'd really like to get in more. Well, after I got my EMT basic, I moved up to where I'm living at now, still working in aviation with another company. But I got involved in the fire service and rescue squads, working on working with fire trucks, working on ambulances as a volunteer. Matter of fact, my wife and I moved into our home in November, right around Thanksgiving. Well, actually on Thanksgiving weekend for that matter. And the following Monday, I was down at that fire department putting an application in for both the rescue squad and the fire service. In 2000, well, let's say I didn't have much time for idle hands. If I wasn't at work, working on aircraft, I was doing something with emergency services. I was going through my training to be a firefighter and all the associative plus going through training for getting my EMT certificate for the state that I currently live in. It was a busy time. And one night on the rescue squad, it was volunteer and 4 of us were hanging around. Through an open mouth insert foot moment, that fall of 2000, I found myself in paramedic class for the next several months. In 2001, the year my son was born, right before he was born, I passed the National Registry. Thanks be to the Lord Jesus above, to become a National Registered paramedic. Why was that important to me? Well, in the 70s, when I was a child, there was one TV show that caught my attention, and it wasn't cartoons. It was a TV show called Emergency. The main characters were named Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto, firefighter paramedics. And this was my opportunity to become somewhat like Johnny and Roy. And I loved working in emergency services. So much so, by the end of 2000, beginning of 2001, my last day working on an aircraft was in February 2001. I found myself working as a full-time firefighter for an industrial firefighter company that was assigned to a local manufacturer. I did that. It did cost me a little bit of money as far as part of my hourly wage, but as being on shift at the fire department, I did get some overtime, but I also needed that schedule to complete paramedic school. See, it's not always being in the classroom. It's not always being in the learning lab, practicing your hands-on skills. But it's also lots of clinical time, riding on ambulances, working in the ER. And we were kind of test subjects for adding additional clinical time. So I had to go to the OR and follow a nurse anesthetist around or anesthesiologist around to see if I can get some practice intubations on live patients. And that was cool. Behavioral health, urgent care, even shadowing a trauma team one time. So all that time took a lot of time, and I needed a schedule that would allow for that training. Well, what's it got to do with safety? Well, aviation had its safety components, from the FAA, of course, but also OSHA was involved as well. I mentioned I loaded aircraft, and the equipment that we used to move around the aircraft and move the containers and move the tuggers and the forklifts and so forth. OSHA requirement. So I finished up paramedic school, got my National Registry paramedic, continued to work at that fire department, and then several months later, I found myself working for an EMS agency, 911 response. Why did I leave the fire department? Well, basically, it's not that I didn't enjoy what I did. It was more so of a financial decision that they basically raised the cost of benefits without giving us a cost of living adjustment to our pay. And I didn't get any extra money for being the only paramedic on the shift, or in the department for that matter, at that time. So I jumped over to EMS, where I would spend the next several years. And healthcare has its own little OSHA and safety requirements. Moving patients. Of course, every year you're going to go through bloodborne pathogen training. In the fire service, you get lots of things like HAZCOM and hazardous materials and the HAZWOPER, and you can go even to hazmat tech. You have a lot of regulations and regulatory agencies and supportive administrative agencies such as the NFPA to abide by. All have a safety underlying component. And I would spend the next 7 years working for the EMS agency. And I enjoyed it. I got to do some cool stuff. Because the way they had it, in order to move up in rank, so to speak, they called it senior medics. Senior medic 1, you come in as a medic, and then you go working your way to being senior medic 1, 2, and 3. And in order to get the senior medic 1, 2, and 3, you had to do extra duties. Now, some of them were okay. You could be a trainer. You could be a community relations team, which went out and when there were special events like festivals or ball games, concert venues and so forth, you would be on standby at the EMS at the location for that period of time. There was bike medics where at some of those special events, you would have saddlebags on a bicycle and we would have our radios and we'd change the uniform up a little bit and we'd go and ride around that event until the event was over. And carry band-aids in our pockets and, cleaning wipes and, it was just something to make the public know that they were being taken care of and that somebody was looking out for them. I also got to be a member of the Special Rescue Team, which had two components. One was a dive team and the other one was a rope rescue team. And I got to be on the rope rescue team. And that was cool, learning about high angle rescue and so forth. But the coolest thing I got to do was be a medic for a tactical team for a law enforcement agency. And if you're wondering what a tactical team is, think SWAT. Yep, I got to be a reserve police officer too in order to do that job, and spent 5 years serving the people of that great team, and I had a blast. But like they say, all good things must come to an end. I was getting burnout working EMS. I'd gone back to school because I am a professional student by trade and earned a master's degree and was trying to figure out something else to do. But it's interesting, God puts people in your path, and the one common thread, as I said in the introduction, you put 50 safety professionals in a room and we will all have different backgrounds and stories on how we got involved in safety. But I bet you one common thread we will all have is there's going to be at least one person, if not more, that came into your path, came into your life, and steered you or mentored you into the safety profession. And that's what happened to me. While I was going through graduate school, I was studying at the table in the headquarters of EMS one day, and a coworker came up to me and asked me what I was doing. I told him what I was studying for, and kind of looked at me and says, "Really? What are you planning on doing with that?" Well, I told him, I said, well, based on my background and my interest, I kind of like to be a safety director, safety consultant, safety manager, or something like that. Interesting, he said. That very same week, I saw that coworker. And he wasn't a stranger to me. We had actually been partnered together a few times before he went to a different shift. And I saw him at the headquarters and I said, "Hey, Brian, how are you doing?" And he's like, "What you doing?" I asked him what he was doing at headquarters because I knew he was on an outlying truck. I didn't know if he was coming to do paperwork or had to get controlled meds or desperate for a supply run. He said, "I came looking for you." Well, my negative mindset sometimes takes me to a bad place. And when he said, "When you come looking for me," I'm like, "What, did we get subpoena from a call that we ran a few years ago or what?" He looked at me, he says, "How serious were you about becoming a safety consultant?" Well, I knew not to be snarky with him. I said, "Well, if the opportunity presented itself, I'd be willing to jump all over it." He says, "You do know that's what I do on my off days." I said, "I had heard something about that, but I didn't want to pester you about it." He says, "Matter of fact, I've been talking with some of the other consultants I work with, and we're talking about bringing somebody on to train them up because we're getting more and more work. Would you be interested?" "You're serious?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Well, yeah, I would be definitely interested in that." He says, "Great." He says, we can't pay you right off the bat." He said, "But you are welcome to shadow us, or shadow me at least, and we'll go ahead and train you up and we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get you a client later on, and then you can start getting paid. Well, I'd be a fool if I didn't take that opportunity. And oddly enough, that first shadow opportunity was my coworker doing some training at my last aviation employer. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I ran into some of the people I used to work with. And I'm glad I left, because you know what happened in 2001 come September that year? Aviation careers took a hit thanks to a certain event. That event was called 9/11. It devastated a lot of aviation. It put a dent in the careers of a lot of people for a long time. And I was thankful to the good Lord above that I got out of it and found something else. Well, as I did more shadowing, eventually it didn't take long, I had my own client earning money, and it was a great side income. And it was not just the experience, but that side income, when you're a single income family, it offered something new and refreshing. I got to take my wife out to eat as a treat and not have to ask her about the budget. I got to buy her flowers or some candy or some little treat every now and then to just kind of let her know I still love her and I appreciate all she's done. Well, upon graduation from graduate school, I did an interview with a couple companies, but nothing came through. And this was a time when the economy was getting a little rough. And I was talking to my friend, he says, "What's your plans?" I said, "Well, to me right now, I need the benefits, particularly healthcare coverage for my family. That's always a concern of mine. I'm not ready to jump ship yet into the world of entrepreneurship." He said, "I understand." I said, "Tell you what, let's set a goal." I said, "Within 5 years, I'd like to be able to leave EMS and be a full-time consultant or a safety professional." He says, "I think that's doable." I said, "Well, let's do it." Well, God doth have a sense of humor, because during my time in grad school, I did a shadow day with the emergency manager of the hospital system I worked for, who happened to be a paramedic at the same agency I worked at. And he called me up one day and told me that there was an opportunity getting ready to happen. It hadn't even been posted yet. And he said, "Would I be interested?" I said, "Absolutely." And he says, "Great, I already gave your resume to the chief." The chief is the safety officer for the hospital. We called him chief because he was a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. I said, "Sounds great." And I talked to my buddy Brian about it, who got me into consulting. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "You'd be a fool not to take it. Especially you get to keep your benefits." He said, "It'd be great opportunity. You're going to learn kind of a specialty niche in safety, and that has to deal with healthcare systems or hospitals." So after 7 years of being on an ambulance, I got the opportunity to walk into safety and emergency management. And that was a new career path, but one I don't regret. Yes, I miss the guys on the SWAT team or the tactical team. I miss my coworkers at EMS, but I made new worked with new coworkers. And I got to get some more training, more experience, lots of incident investigations. And then sometimes it was doing some research. Just because of my size, there was, shall we say, some injuries of the rad techs that had to go in and do portable x-rays of patients, and the manipulating of patients in their beds. Some were able to assist and a lot of them were not. So that I would get dragged in and be the patient to try out new devices that would help ease the transition of the x-ray plate going behind the patient and how to properly move somebody. and help, seeing numbers decrease. Because some of us are a little warped. We get into safety, accident investigation be cool. Nah, not really, because there's a system failure somewhere. Especially when it's your own company and you got a fellow employee that's hurt and you don't want to see that. I loved what I did. I got to do a great number of things. Became a hazmat tech, was on a hospital emergency response team where we had a mobile, like a MASH facility that was able to be set up. We had a med surge team, we had a decon team. So lots of things, and they all got used from time to time. And we've had to deal with some situations. When I first got in there, the little thing called H1N1, flu virus. Later on, it became the Ebola scare a few years later. Fortunately, I got out before the COVID situation happened. But again, I learned. I earned a certification called Certified Healthcare Safety Professional. It's recognized amongst healthcare, but I wanted the gold standard. I knew the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, the CSP, was the gold standard, and I wanted it. But I'd have to, at that time, look like I had to pay for it, and it's not a financially easy endeavor, especially when you're single income. After 8.5 years, I took advantage of an opportunity to take a job that I thought I was made for, or thought I would be really good at. It was in the insurance industry, property claims adjusting. Being in the fire service, during all this time, I remained in the fire service. I remained in the fire service for 20 years. So I went through trainings, I was a fire marshal. All of it would benefit my job at hand. But I wanted to try the claims, it just looked interesting to me. And I did eventually get on with the company and went through their training program. And I lasted a whole whopping 19 months. Rapid burnout. It was not a good fit for me. And it's okay to realize that some things may not be a good fit for you. For some of you, safety may not be a good fit. Yes, the claims adjusting did involve some safety components I had to factor in when I'm writing up estimates. Are they working at heights? Are we going to have to deal with asbestos testing? Are we going to have to deal with lead testing? Are we dealing with special PPE for certain situations? Well, I had to come to the realization that it was okay to be a good safety professional. And so I got back into safety, not in the healthcare side, but supply chain logistics. That's a different one. And worked in that industry for about a year. Due to some financial decisions way above my head and way above the local leadership level, I ended up and this is in 2020. In March, found out that we lost about 2/3 of the contract that we had with the customer we were supporting. In April, I got furloughed, even though I was the only safety person for the company at that location. I said, well, I know how you feel really about safety if you're furloughing me. During that month of April 2020, yeah, I'm not going to make a great retiree. I was going stir crazy. Yeah. For those of you that have a dog that likes to go take a ride in their vehicle, go for a ride, and you just do that thing like shake the car keys, or you say something like, you want to go bye-bye? And the dog gets all excited about going for a ride. Yeah, I learned how the dog feels because my wife would grab her keys and I'd hear her and I'm like, where's she going? Can I go too? And I would laugh about it, but it was kind of serious at the same time. During that month of April, I had to decide what I was going to do because my job was going to come to an end in September 30th of 2020 if something didn't happen. So I decided I was going to venture into the entrepreneurial world. become a ghostwriter, collaborative writer, throw my hat into the ring of the safety consulting world, do another sideline business that I had detailing vehicles to get immediate cash income coming in. I was thinking, how am I going to support my family? And I had to be comfortable with that. And I had to go learn some new skill sets and figure out how I was going to take these paths. Who did I mean to make a connection to? When I came off of furlough, fortunately the company I was working with told me, my boss told me, he says, they already hired somebody in the safety slot for the company and it's taken over the 2/3 that we lost. He says, so technically you're free to go at any time you want to if you find something. He said, but if you need to join an association or you need to pay for some kind of networking or special training, we'll reimburse you. Well, that was a blessing, because what I did is I rejoined the American Society of Safety Professionals, a local chapter that was near me, just to start making networking connections. I wasn't looking for a job from anybody through them. I was just looking for it for the businesses I was getting ready to start. Well, again, God stepped in July. And I reached out to the president of the chapter through a phone call, trying to see how I can become involved, what I could do to help out, start building up my writing skills, opportunities, doing blogs, newsletters, or whatever. And I remember calling him on a Thursday afternoon. He says, so what's your story? What do you do now? What have you done? I said, well, I told him what was going on. I told him a little bit of my background and told him a little bit about what was going on and what was coming up in September. He says, really? Well, send me a resume. We'll do lunch next week. I said, excuse me, sir, but I didn't call you for a job, or were you hiring? I was calling you to become, yeah. He says, we'll take care of that. We'll talk about ASSP too. He said, but I'm always looking for good safety people. Go ahead and send me your resume, and we'll do lunch next week. Said, cool. I kind of looked up at God. I'm like, what are you doing here? Well, I sent my resume. He emailed me back. He said salary requirements, and I stepped out in faith a little bit and went $12,000 higher than what I'm currently making. I figured I had enough experience that it was worth something. And he just sent me thumbs up emojis back. The following week, I go to have lunch with this gentleman, and he brings the treasurer of the chapter. Turns out the treasurer also worked for the same company that the chapter president worked for. And we had a great time talking and lunch, and he says, well, are you willing to travel? Well, at this stage in life, my kids are about ready to finish high school. I said, you know what, I guess I am open to it now. He says, great, I might have an opportunity for you. I said, sounds great. And I kind of left it at that. Well, didn't hear anything for a while, so I texted him. I said, well, where in this one location is this one job you're potentially sending me to? And he told me, he says, but I'm working on something else. And so I said, well, are you telling me there's no opportunity with your company? He says, not at all. I'm trying to find the best fit for you. Okay. That was on a Tuesday in July 2020. That Wednesday morning, I usually would go in late because I would stay late to do orientation at the company I was working for the second shift on Tuesday evenings. So Wednesday, I would go in late, and my phone starts buzzing. It's texting a message. He says, got a position for you. Give me, it's going to be, he's give me a call. So I called him. I said, what you got? Well, it wasn't in another state. It was in my home state. It was within a couple hours. And I said, well, yeah. I said, I said, what are we talking money-wise? I didn't want to get too much into money wise because it was like, well, here's a bird in the hand beats two in the bush situation. I'll make it worth your while. That's okay. And lo and behold, by the end of July, I was working for the company I currently work for, and that is called Eldeco, an electrical development contractor, and that's makes up Eldeco. It's not Eldeco, it's Eldeco, and been a blessing overall with my safety career because I had construction safety dealing with the hospital because there's always renovations and remodeling going on and sometimes new projects going on. But I was about ready to jump into the deep end. And I really wondered if they hired the right person. But like I said, and I've been with the company over 5.5 years, I've earned 5 Board of Certified Safety Professional certifications because of Eldeco. I appreciate them doing that. I appreciate the opportunities that I've had. I've grown a lot in my safety profession. I've learned a lot, still learning to this day. That's why I said safety is so broad and can be complex in nature depending on what you're doing, but there's always a safety component somewhere. So what do I recommend? What's my advice? Always be willing to learn. Stay humble. Find a mentor. Find that one person that you can network with that just might get your foot in the door. Don't pester them, but just be eager to learn. Talk to them. If you have the opportunity to shadow, so what if they don't pay you? You get an opportunity. And that's pretty much my story up to this day and age. Again, here recently, why did I start this channel? Because I think my story and many other safety professional story can help others with their career journey in the world of safety. And we're going to look at other careers that kind of parallel safety, such as industrial hygiene. I'm not an industrial hygienist, but I know some. And we'll listen to their stories as well. And just glean from it what you think might work for you. Hey, if you're just getting started in something, learn the safety aspects of your job. If you're still working but you want to get into safety, make sure you understand the safety aspects of your current job. You just can't say, I want to go work in safety because this doesn't seem like they do anything or it's not strenuous. No, you trade stresses. You may go from a physical stress to a more mental stress because you're trying to reduce numbers, you're trying to reduce incidents, or you're trying to fight a culture that may be of the mindset, get it done at all costs until somebody gets hurt, and then it's going to cost them more money. So, hey, that's my story. It's my honest story. It's not every single detail. I know I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate you tuning in and watching. Click that like and subscribe. And we look forward to the next video. Take care. God bless.